It's often useful to store related values together in a single variable. To do so, you create an array, which is similar to a list. PHP has two types of arrays, indexed and associative. In this video, we'll look at how indexed arrays work. Let's indulge my passion for Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and create an array for some of the main characters. You store an array in an ordinary variable. So I'm going to call my array characters. Then after the assignment operator, the traditional way to create an array is to use the array keyword followed by a pair of parentheses, and the values that you want to store in the array go between the parentheses as a comma-separated list. The names of the characters are all strings, so they need to be in quotes. So Arthur Dent, and then the comma needs to go outside of the quotes. Next we'll have Ford Prefect, and we'll finish with Zaphod Beeblebrox. You can't use echo with an array. Let's see what happens if you try. So if we save that and load this page into a browser, because I'm using PHP 7, I get this notice about array to string conversion. You can't automatically convert an array to string in PHP. Then down here it displays simply array. If you're using PHP 5, all you will see is array. You won't see the notice. So we've stored our values inside an array. We need a way to get at those values. The way that you inspect the contents of an array is to use a function called printr. So let's go back to the editing program. I'll comment out that line, and then we'll use print underscore r, and then a pair of parentheses after that. Between that you put the array, so characters, and if we save that and refresh the page in the browser, this time we can see the contents of the array, and each array element has a number starting from 0, and this number is known as the array index. So Arthur Dent has the index 0, Ford Prefect has the index 1, and Zaphod Beeblebrox has the index 2. And you use the array index to access the individual array elements. But before doing that, as I mentioned before, the array keyword is the traditional way to create an array in PHP. But ever since PHP 5.4, you can use the same shorthand as in JavaScript. So let's just see that. I'm going to duplicate this line here and then comment out the first one. And the shorthand doesn't use the array keyword and parentheses. It gets rid of the keyword and just uses a pair of square brackets. That's exactly the same as in JavaScript. So if we save that, we are still using printr. If we refresh the page in the browser, we get exactly the same result. So using the shorthand works exactly the same as using the traditional method with the array keyword. It doesn't matter which you use. It's very often just a matter of personal preference. I like to use the shorthand. You can add more elements to an existing array by using an empty pair of square brackets after the variable name and assigning the value directly. So let's just create a little bit of extra space down here, and then we'll add another element to our characters array. So it's the array variable followed by an empty pair of square brackets, the assignment operator, and the value you want to assign. So we'll add Marvin to our list, and then another one, empty pair of square brackets, the assignment operator, and then let's add the creator of the Norwegian fjords, who was strangely reluctant to reveal his name. I wonder why. Slati Bartfast. And if we save that and refresh this page in the browser, those two elements have been added, and PHP has automatically assigned the next available numbers. So Marvin has the array index 3, and Slati Bartfast has the array index 4. And we can use that array index to access individual array elements. So let's display the value of the second one, Ford Prefect. So go back to the editing program, comment out printr, and then we will echo, and it's our characters array, then we need a pair of square brackets, and all we do is we put the index in there. So we're looking for the second element. That's index 1, not 2. We're counting from 0. So if we then display that, it gives us Ford Prefect. So that's how you store multiple values in an indexed array and access them using the array index. To create an indexed array, you can use the array keyword with the values you want to store as a comma-separated list between a pair of parentheses. Alternatively, the shorthand syntax lists the values between square brackets just like JavaScript. PHP automatically assigns each value an index number beginning from 0. You can inspect the contents of an array with printr, and you access individual array elements using its index number between square brackets after the variable name. PHP has another type of array called an associative array, and we'll look at that next. In the previous video, we looked at storing multiple values in an indexed array. The other type of array in PHP is called an associative array. Instead of a numeric index, each array element is identified by a string. So in effect, the array stores a set of key value pairs. Let's create an associative array for descriptions from the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So we need a variable to store our array. I'll call it descriptions. Then after the assignment operator, just like an indexed array, you can use either the array keyword or the shorthand syntax. With the array keyword, you have a comma-separated list between parentheses. With the shorthand syntax, you just have the comma-separated list between a pair of square brackets. I'm going to use the shorthand syntax, so a pair of square brackets, and I'm going to add an extra line in between those square brackets so I can space my code out to make it easier to read. So we need to start off with the key for each element. It needs to be a unique string. So we're having some descriptions from the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. We'll have a description for Earth. That's the string which will act as the key. Then we need to assign the value to it. You assign the value using a double arrow operator, which is an equal sign followed immediately by a greater than sign. Then the value, Earth is mostly harmless, we hope. Then a comma for our next key value pair. We'll have Marvin as the key. Then the double arrow operator and the description of Marvin, who is the paranoid android. And of course at the end we need a semicolon. You access associative array elements in exactly the same way as an indexed array, except that instead of the index number, you use the array key between square brackets after the array variable. So let's display the value for Marvin. So echo, and then descriptions, and in square brackets, and it's a string, so it must be in quotes, Marvin. And if we save that and load the page into the browser, it displays the value that is stored in that associative array with Marvin. You can also add elements to an existing associative array by inserting the key between a pair of square brackets after the variable name. So let's just add something else. We'll have our descriptions, then a pair of square brackets, then a string will go in there. The key will be Zaphod. And then when you assign a value like this, you don't use the double arrow operator. For an individual one, you just use the ordinary assignment operator. So the value will be President of the Imperial Galactic Government. And we can inspect that array. This has now been expanded using printr. So if we just comment out that line, then use printr, put our array variable between the parentheses, save and refresh the page in the browser. There are the keys: Earth, the value, mostly harmless, Marvin, the paranoid android, and Zaphod, the president of the Imperial Galactic Government. So it works in exactly the same way as inspecting an indexed array. So using an indexed array or an associative array is pretty much the same. There is one big difference though with an associative array. you can't put an associative array element directly inside a double quoted string. Let's see what happens if you try. I'm going to comment that line out, and then we'll have echo and a double quoted string. We'll have the description of Earth. Then we'll have our descriptions array and the Earth element. And my editing program always puts red wavy lines under parts where it thinks there is a syntax error. So obviously it regards this as being a major problem. I'm going to ignore that for the moment. Just going to save and refresh the page in the browser. And we get this horrendous message here about T in caps and white space. Don't worry about what that means. It's telling you that there is a problem here with trying to embed an associative array element directly into a double quoted string. And the way to get around this is actually very simple. All we need to do is to wrap the associative array element inside a pair of curly braces. So immediately before the $sign, an opening curly brace, and then at the end, after the closing square bracket, another curly brace, the closing curly brace. Those red wavy lines have gone away. My editing program is now happy. I'll just resave and then refresh the browser. And now we are processing correctly that associative array element in the double quoted string. So that's how you get rid of that particular problem. So we've looked at both indexed arrays and associative arrays. Arrays are a very important part of PHP, and you'll use them a lot. They store multiple values in a single variable. Although the values don't need to be related, they normally are. The only values that we've stored are strings, but arrays can store any type of value, including numbers and even other arrays. Indexed arrays use numbers starting from 0 to identify each array element, whereas associative arrays use a string to identify each value. We also saw how to inspect the contents of an array with printr, as well as how to include an associative array element in a double quoted string by wrapping it in curly braces. It's time to put some of your new knowledge to the test by embedding some PHP into HTML. In the Chapter 2 02_10 folder of the exercise files is this file called embed.php. The PHP block at the top of the page defines two arrays. The first one, book, is an associative array with details of a book, and the second one, characters, is an indexed array of the book's main characters. In a real-world situation, these arrays would probably come from a database result, but to keep things simple, they're hard-coded into the page. The challenge is to use these arrays to create the contents of a web page. The HTML down here contains the basic structure of a page. Embed PHP in the HTML to create the main heading and the first paragraph. Then below the second heading, create an unordered list to display the names of the 5 main characters. There's no single correct solution. Just use what you have learned in this chapter to complete the page. It shouldn't take you more than 5 or 10 minutes, but it's not a time trial. Don't rush. Although this isn't particularly difficult, it is easy to make a mistake, and you need to think about how to join strings together. Do you use double quotes or the concatenation operator? They're both perfectly valid choices. In the next video, I'll show you how I did it. The challenge was to use the arrays in the PHP block at the top of embed.php to create the content for the web page. There's no single correct solution, but this is how I would do it. The main heading on line 23 simply says book, and the first paragraph simply says description. And we can get both of those from this book associative array. But because we're dealing with an associative array, we need to work carefully. So let's just delete that book placeholder between the h1 tags, and we need to embed a PHP block in there. I'm going to use the shorthand for echo because there's no need for any other PHP code in this block. So that's shorthand, and then we'll have the closing tag as well, and then between that we need to have the value that we're going to display. Now, rather than just the book title, I want to include the name of the author, so I'm going to use a double quoted string. So a pair of quotes in there, but the thing is that both the book title and the author come from an associative array, so to embed them in a double quoted string we need to have curly braces. So a pair of curly braces, we'll have the closing one there, and then we'll type in between there book, and the element that we want is title. Then after that closing curly brace, some literal text by, and then another pair of curly braces, and between those curly braces we'll have book and the author element. So that's dealt with the title, the main heading. So let's take a look at the description. We'll just delete that, and then we can also use the shorthand for echo, so put that in there quickly, and then the closing tag, and then we need to go between those two tags. And let's scroll up and take a look at description. It's not a complete sentence, so we need to embed that either in a double quoted string or we need to use the concatenation operator. I'm going to use the concatenation operator. Scroll back down again, and I want the book title to be in quotes, so we need a pair of single quotes, and then between them we'll have a single double quote. Need to get rid of that second one that's been put in by my editor. And then we have the concatenation operator. Then we'll have book and the title element. Then we need the concatenation operator again and another pair of single quotes. Then we need to have the closing quote for around the title. Put that in there. Again, get rid of that extra one that has been put in by my editing program. Then a space, the word is, and another space. Then we've got that closing quote there. After the closing quote, the concatenation operator again, and then we have from the book array the description. And that looks fine to me, but we need to have a period or a full stop at the end of the sentence. I'm going to put that outside of the PHP block. Now you might have noticed that I haven't used a semicolon either here or here. And when you've got only one command inside a PHP block, that's perfectly legal. But I still prefer to have the semicolon in there, so I'm going to put them in there. And then we need to deal with this main characters. That needs to be an unordered list of the main characters. So we need some HTML, so that'll be a UL tag. And then between the UL tag we'll have a list item. And inside that one list item we need a PHP block. So again, use the shorthand for echo. And then between the two, characters is an indexed array. So we need to start from 0. So we'll have characters, and then in square brackets, 0. And then I'll put in that semicolon at the end. And I can now duplicate that 4 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And then just change the index here to 1, 2, 3, and 4. And that's all we need to do. So let's just save that and then load the page into a browser and see what we get. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and there is the description. We've got the period or the full stop at the end, then the main characters, an unordered list. So congratulations if you got a result similar to mine. If you got error messages, it probably means that you had mismatched quotes, brackets or braces. Check your code carefully against my completed version in embed_end.php in the chapter 2 02_11 folder. We'll look at troubleshooting errors in chapter 8. But let's get back to the code to review what we've done. I think that the tricky aspects of this challenge were handling the associative array elements, particularly with the double quoted string here on line 23, and then using the concatenation operator on line 24. Something else that might have caught you out is remembering that index arrays start at 0. To be honest, I found using the concatenation operator here on line 24 trickier than embedding associative array elements in double quotes, but it doesn't matter which style you use. There's often more than one way to do something in PHP, and as you'll discover later in this course, we could have used a loop to generate the unordered list of characters. It involves less code and is quicker. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Next up on the agenda is using conditional statements to make decisions.